What a treat you're in for to listen to Al Simpson. He is one of the truly great statesmen of the last century, and who knows what he'll accomplish in this current century. Al grew up in Cody, Wyoming. For those of you, that's the area just east of Yellowstone. If you get lost, you get over into Cody as you go forward. He was an outstanding scholar and a terrific athlete, and recruited by the University of Wyoming to play football for them. At 6'7" and 245 pounds, he was a force to be reckoned with. And if some of you may remember those football games between Wyoming and Denver University, well, Al Simpson participated in those. And Governor Lamb, I think it was after one of Al's games that DU decided to do away with football. I don't know how much Al had to do with it or not. But at Wyoming, he ended up starting a lifetime practice of helping out Colorado, which he did throughout his life. Not many people know it, but Al, by himself, was a major factor in the increased sales of Coors beer north of the border. He went on to become an attorney. He married Ann and became civilized to a limited degree. He served our nation in the armed services and in Congress. I had a chance to get to know him a little better in the U.S. Senate. What an extraordinary person he was. He was an individual not just bright and who knew the bills, which put him in the top 10% of the Senate, but he was someone who could work with all people and work out solutions. And time again, it was Al Simpson who put together compromises. He never compromised his principle, but he was able to get people to work together. And it's become a lifetime practice. I'm not going to go into the great things he did because many of you are aware of them, but he truly made a difference. He was the kind of legislator I suspect you would hope all of them were. Someone who had intelligence, commitment, integrity, and ability to get things done. After he left the Senate, he continued to contribute to our country, and I think many of you are aware of his noble work in terms of offering solutions for a balanced budget, returning sanity to some of the trust funds. But a darker event occurred in his life. He went from an honest, upright cowboy in Wyoming to become a professor at Harvard. He was recruited to be the distinguished scholar at the Kennedy School of Business. Some of you may not remember, but before Al went to Harvard, he was 6'7". You'll notice he's about 5 inches shorter than that today, and it must be from that experience at Harvard. All I know is I remember the conflicts he had with his students. So many of the students at Harvard simply didn't understand the West, and it was up to Al to explain the West, not just government to them. He was well known, I think, for the story of explaining to them how cattle were mated. He described that when a rancher takes his bull and mates it with the neighbor's heifers or cows, that they call that servicing the cows. And the students all responded, and they said, well, is that the definition you have in mind when you claim to have represented and served Wyoming in the Senate for 3 terms? Well, you're going to have a special treat today because you'll get a chance to hear from one of the greatest statesmen who've ever served our country. He's one of the only individual in the history of Colorado and Wyoming that rose to the number 2 spot in the U.S. Senate. But he's also a person, I think, that has set an example for anyone who ever wants to enter public service. Senator Al Simpson.
No wonder you went around the other way of the table when you came back. Of all the introductions I've ever had, that was the most recent. Well, I don't know, but I knew, just relax. I wrote all this stuff down. It's my own writing. I know we're going to take questions. Answers is a different matter. Questions I like, they come off the floor, but they come off the wall. That's what happens with questions. Now, let me tell you something. I listened to that, and I knew you'd tell that service thing again. I'm tired of it, just plain damn tired of it. Now, the reason my pants are up is because I have silk underwear on, and I'm trying to shake it down. You know how that is. But, you know, it's colder than Christian charity out there, and I wasn't about to suffer through it. Now, I was in Rotary for 20 years. 20 years, and they said that Rotarian was the first one to call John the Baptist Jack. You ever hear that? No, obviously you hadn't. Well, have another bite of your lunch. And then 20 years in Rotary, I used to help write the scripts for the show, Rotary show. We put it on at the district conference up there and at the Broadmoor years ago, several times. Wonderful thing and very enjoyable. I knew the four-way test. I used to give it to the new members. It was a heartwarming thing as I'd step forward and say, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? How many of you can say that? Yeah. Well, by the way you're clapping, obviously you haven't memorized that, but I had to do it because I was chairman of that particular event, which was quite moving when we took in the new members. Now, what I had in Laramie was a Budweiser tumor. It was well taken care of. I did weigh 240, thought beer was food, and I called it the Budweiser tumor. And no one ever dreamed that it would affect my football, but when we played DU on Thanksgiving Day, let me tell you, those were battles, and they were great games. And then, of course, DU dropped the ball. Now, Dick Lamb is sitting over there. He and I have more fun than you can imagine. We pissed off more people than you can ever imagine. And one time we took on the sanctuary movement. We said sanctuary is not some bum who crept across the border looking for work. Sanctuary means the guns are out. They're after him. The dogs are chasing him. And then this guy's hiding in a basement and using this precious term of sanctuary. Well, they threw us out of several states. We did travel together, irritating people on sanctuary. And that was a lot of fun. And but Hank Brown, a dear friend, we served together in the Senate. We were known as a couple of moderate Republicans, which are about as extinct as Diplodocus now, but we did that. And it was there at Northern Colorado when he was retiring, when he serviced me. And so I want to acknowledge my two partners here. There are more of them. There are 30 of them, I think, or 40, but here's Peter and Mike, very active in Craig Hospital. And Mike, in April, will go into the National Trial Lawyers Hall of Fame at Temple University. That's a great lawyer. And I've tried to help them all I could without practicing, actually, or keeping time records or doing in more jury trials. And they're good to me. They're very kind. God bless you, my sons. Thank you for coming. I didn't pay for your lunch. I hope somebody got that. No. But they're wonderful, and it's been a great joy and a great honor. Now, my time is limited, and we're going to take questions. But Hank said, God, don't tell any old jokes. He said, I've heard them all. I said, no, I don't need new jokes. I need new audiences. And that's a very important thing. And so I wanted to, the word of the day is politics. It's a Greek word. It comes from the Greek. A lot of great things come from the Greek, great government. The word politics, poly meaning many, and ticks meaning blood-sucking insects. So people don't like politics. They think it's stupid, sloppy, bizarre, frustrating, maddening, nuts, banal, disgusting. But let me tell you, you can't love democracy and hate politics. Now, you hear that. Politics is democracy. You can't love democracy and hate politics. It doesn't work. So anyway, but the fairly new joke was this guy, he's over 60, he's in the gym working his abs over so he can go troll for the dollies, and a gal came in her yoga outfit, and he said to the trainer, he said, what machine should I get on to really impress her? And he said, the ATM. And of course, you'll like this, Hank, with your twisted sense of humor. This Nauvoo rich couple brought a seaside home. The beautiful daughter was washed out to the surf, and she brought her back. She's a beautiful girl, and the lifeguard went to work, and the mother cried out, "Give her artificial insemination." And the father hollered, "Wait, I've got money now, give her the real thing." Think about it when you get home. Now, and then, of course, the two guys sitting in a penitentiary in another state, and one turned to the other and said, "The food was better here when you were governor." I didn't tell that to John last night. All right, now that the fun part's over, don't worry, I know what, I'll get my watch out, it'll give you a false sense of confidence. Oh God, what time is it? I gotta get out. No, okay, we say to people, what would you cut? If you were doing this business, which we did, we got 5 Democrats, 5 Republicans, 1 independent to vote for this package. You couldn't have done any better. You had Dick Durbin and Tom Coburn. How do you reach a spectrum like that? And they both supported it. So you say, what would you cut? Well, let's see. We cut Nancy Pelosi's airplane, waste, fraud, and abuse, congressional salaries, foreign aid. That's like a sparrow belch. That doesn't do anything. 2/3 of the American budget today and what they just passed is not being dealt with. 2/3. What is it? Health care. All of that is going to succeed down the road. Can't possibly work. Forget the nastiness of it. Forget the politics of it. You can't imagine what you're facing. You've got 10,000 a day turning 65. One person in the United States weighs more than the other 2. You got diabetes, type 1, type 2. You could do a little something with type 2. You've got stuff to do with lawyers and doctors and providers who make an item for 83 cents and sell it to the government for $8. You got to do something with hospitals who keep 2 sets of books. Some of them keep 3 to see how much they can get out of the Treasury. You got to do something with Medicaid so that you can keep running back to the state capitol and say, get this turkey out of our state and dump it back on the feds. We don't want to play this game. Then you got to do something with a guy who could buy this place and gets a heart operation for $200,000 and never even gets a bill. What about that? Part B premiums. 1/4 of it paid by the beneficiary regardless of their net worth, and the guys in the kitchen paying the other 75. That's your country. That's just part of it. So let's get to the myths of the day. Defense. You're supposed to jump up, pound your chest, and salute 50. I'm a veteran. I'm a member of the VFW and the American Legion. They haven't ripped my epaulets off, but you wouldn't want to have your epaulets ripped. I certainly wouldn't. And so remember, only 4% of us ever heard a live shot go past our head, fired by an enemy. There are guys that have served 6 months and a year, never left Camp Beetle Bailey and don't know a mortar tube from either end, and they're the bitchers. Well, the defense budget is unbelievable. It's 600, 640, whatever it is. And the defense budget of the top other countries in the world combined, including Russia and China, is $540 billion. And we're talking short. So we dug into it. Kent Conrad great guy we worked with, Democrat. He said to the defense guys, "How many contractors do you have?" Well, he said it's quite a figure, but we said, "Could you share it with us?" Yes, it's between 1 million and 10 million contractors. So when you see a guy and he says, "What do you do?" He said, "I'm a contractor with the Defense Department." Nothing wrong with that if you've been in the military and you go back in, but when you have a flag officer retired who's knocking down $500 an hour with cronyism, you're not doing very well with your money. So then we said, well, you still have Department of Defense schools in America? Do you know that there are 64 Department of Defense schools in America? They're all right next to a public school. They're overseas, they should be, and my wife was a sub when we were at Fort Benning, teacher. And they educate less than 20,000 students at a cost of $51 billion, because they all have a superintendent and principals and teachers. Anybody going to cut back on that? You ever heard it? No, you never will. You could. Here's one for you. Don't throw anything. Keep your dinner rolls. If I'd stayed in the reserves another few years, I'd have been a military retiree. There are only 2.2 million of them. That's a very small cohort of people. They have their own health care plans called TRICARE. The premium is $540 a year. They raised the copay from $3 to $6 the last time. And 85% of the care goes to their dependents. And it costs $53 billion a year. They got commissaries still out there in the land, which were a recruiting device, except they're used by the retirees, where you can buy your booze for less and your lettuce for less. And there are those things, and they're telling us we can't fuel the Harry Truman in the Gulf or give a hot breakfast in Afghanistan. And ladies and gentlemen, there's a great Western word for that, and I won't use it. This is madness. And you can't mention it, because then you're an unpatriotic slob. That's what you are. I hate, by God, what kind of a veteran are you? Well, enough of that. I knew that you wouldn't throw anything right then, but now we move on. I want you to hear this one, because the nastiest letters I get, and some of my emails are actually quite disturbing, and the people who are sending them are disturbed. And it's about Social Security. Simpson, you're trying to get my Social Security, you rotten son of a bitch. Yeah, we're going to get you. I said, well, I'm not in there anymore. But so, Social Security, if you read the trustees' report, it says, and these are five Dems and 5 Republicans, people you'd know, great American. They say that Social Security in the year 2034 will pay out 23% less. And everybody knows this. Social Security right now is $900 billion in negative cash flow. Started in 2010 while we were doing our work, was the first time the money coming in from the guys in the kitchen was going out to the guys regardless of their net worth or their income. When I was at the university and thought beer was food, there were 16 people paying into Social Security and 1 taking out. Today there are 3 people paying in and 1 taking out. How long do you think that'll last? Disability insurance will either be corrected this year or go broke. Doesn't mean it quits. It just won't pay out what it was supposed to, because it's been severely abused. So those are nice little things to bring up, cheerful things at lunch, but true. And when Erskine and I would go around the country and tell these things, people would run right back to their office or to the newspaper and say, are these guys crazy? Where the hell are they getting these figures? Well, we didn't get them from the right or the left. We got them from the source, the trustees of the system of Social Security and Medicare. They have trustees, and they're telling us these things. So what has happened is that if you're a Republican and you talk about tax reform or, quote, revenue, you'll be visited at night by Grover Nordquist on his white horse, which end of the horse would be difficult to discern. But then the common good would come and visit your home and say, I think you better realize we have a primary opponent for you, Buster. You keep talking like that. And if you're a Democrat, start talking about entitlement reform, solvency of these great systems. You're going to be visited by the AFL-CIO and the unions and the AARP. They will visit your home and say, I think you need to think again before we put a primary opponent in against you. And so your country is stuck, because all you have to do as a legislator is stick with your base, and then to hell with anything else. As long as you do that, you can go back. And they all have a penchant for re-election. They become panders instead of patriots. And Erskine and I saw that, and the group saw that. Well, let me tell you a final one, and then you can fire away. Here's one. Next time you hear the one from the guy, Sampson, how about them 47% of those people ain't paying no tax at all? By God, that really rankles me up. I say, well, it should. You should stay rankled, and you should have gas, ulcers, and heartburn in the process. But let me tell you something. In the tax code, when we dug into the tax code, we found over 180 tax expenditures. You don't know what those are, but you know the names of them. Home mortgage interest deduction, Blue Cross, Blue Shield, parking for employees, charitable contributions, tax, municipal tax. The cost of those when we did our work was $1,100,000,000,000 a year, which was exactly how much income came in from personal income taxes that year of 2010. Exactly $1,100,000,000,000 down the rat hole. So then we looked into it even further. We said, okay, we won't get rid of the home mortgage interest deduction, but $1 million and, fiddling around with your second home, we think you can get along without that. So we'll give a 12.5, make it $500,000, and do a 12.5%, refundable tax credit, which would help the little guy. Oh, well, yeah, we help the little guy. We talk about the little guy day and night. Well, so here's the figure for you. Now get your dinner roll. Only 20% of the American people use 80% of the stuff in the tax code, which means that 80% of our fellow citizens don't even know what's in the tax code. 75% of the American people don't itemize, don't care, and there we are. And who are the 20% of the American people who use 80% of the goodies in the code? Every one of us should get our hand in the air right now. Now, that is not good stuff to share, but it's real. And the people can handle truth. If there's any group that handle truth, it's the four-way test. Is it the truth? Well, what I'm telling you is absolutely the truth. I've said it with a little humor just to protect myself. I've been on the witness protection program. But you can't believe the savagery of people over 60 who write to me and email the foulest. I mean, they have invented Anglo-Saxon words that will outdo any that I knew, and I know more than George Carlin. So they don't like it. They're furious. And I just say, well, we have a solution for you. Well, what is it? I said, give the lowest 20% 125% of poverty. That's costs. You should pay it. Give the older old from 80 to 85 1% more. From 80 to 85, you get an extra percent. Change the bend points. That's inside baseball, but it makes it more progressive. and then raise the wages subject to the tax from 118, kick it up to 200, kick it up to 250. However, we had one witness say that if we took the lid off, he would quit working so hard. We gave him the Patriotism of the Year award, sent him down the road with his tail, well, enough of that. So, and then, don't forget, the retirement age will be 67 in the year 27. And we suggested, I know we shouldn't have done it, but we did, Democrats and Republicans, we said, let's move the retirement age to 68 by the year 2050. And the AARP went insane. And they can go insane. They don't give a rat's butt about their grandchildren. If you're a member of the AARP, you ought to look at it real close, because they don't care about their children or their grandchildren. Their degree of selfishness is appalling. We couldn't even, and the president was helping us to change the CPI to a thing called the chained CPI, and we couldn't get it done. The president had to back away. Hell, everybody backed away. It's a more realistic gauge of inflation, which would fit today. And so here we are. And this is it. People, I wouldn't leave you without saying, what the hell are you going to do with it? Dick Durbin kept asking, where's the tipping point? The tipping point is here when you figure that of these 20 trillion bucks that we will own at the end of this decade, 20 trillion bucks, and nobody knows what a trillion bucks is, but if you want to figure it, I think it was 13.5 billion years ago was the spinning off of the planets. That ain't even close to a trillion, and we owe 20 of those babies. So you sit here and you sat in our meetings and say, where's the tipping point? And the tipping point is half of that's owned privately and half of it's public, and half of the public is China. People say, well, get rid of, just don't forget the debt. Nobody cares. I said, the creditors care, and everybody in this room should care. Your money's involved in that stuff. The deficit is going down, and so people are asleep. I don't care if the deficit goes to zero, the debt is on automatic pilot. If you can't make that distinction, you know, you're just not, you're not a citizen. So, when that happens, the tipping point, the people who loaned us the money will say, we love you, you have a dysfunctional government, and you're addicted to debt, and we want a little more money for our money. And at that point, inflation will kick up, and interest right now is $250 billion a year, and by the changes they made in this budget, it will be $600 billion a year, which is money down the rat hole and going to countries to use for their infrastructure, their education, their things that we talk about every day. So people say, what the hell do we do? And I'll tell you, Ann and I finally figured it out. The Tea Party took over everything in Park County, and they're good people. But they have some of the goofiest ideas, like get rid of the 16th Amendment. I said, well, what do you replace it with? Well, I don't know. We'll figure it out. It's the income tax. And maybe the value tax, value added would be good stuff. But so, and then, of course, social issues. You don't want to talk to them about that. We don't, and I won't bring it up, but I've been called a rhino and worse, and Hank has been one of those, a rhino. It's a sad thing to think. Oh, wait, where were we? So, we then got a group together and put together a slate of precinct committee men and women all over the Park County, and we all ran and beat them. And Ann and I now have started where we started in 1958. We're precinct committee men and women of 25-1 in Park County. So if you want to know what to do, get off your butt and get cracking. Instead of bitching and howling, get in the game, because you're going to take part or get taken apart. This is big time. And these special interest groups on both sides are punishing Democrats and Republicans with great ideas. And so the next time you're a congressman and you're there, I hope you're there, he gets up and says, I know the problem, it's dead serious, but we can do it without cutting precious Medicare, precious Medicaid, precious Social Security and precious defense. And then you get up in the back and say, you are giving a terminological inexactitude, you lying son of a bitch. Now, if you don't want to do that, you don't have to do that. But let me tell you, get in the game. Rotarians always were in the game. I've never been prouder of any group than I loved it. But I could go on, and you're thinking, my God, he is going to do it. And I'll be glad to take questions from the floor that'll come off the wall, if you want to. Anything you want, public, personal, private, you name it, shoot.
Senator, first, thanks so much for being here today.
Wow.
I have two questions following up on your closing comments. How do we truly mobilize the electorate to get involved and hold government officials accountable? That's question one. Question two, given our...
Is that Mike? I had a mortar platoon, and that we didn't know what earplugs were.
I'll be closer.
Yeah.
You hear that?
Yeah.
How do we truly get the electorate mobilized to engage with their congressmen and other elected officials to deal with the issues that you've talked about, number one? Number two, given our presidential race, do you see any of those candidates as able to lead this kind of an effort?
Well, I got to go to the bathroom. No, I don't. No. The first part there was about, I didn't bring my hearing aid, and my wife had left the room, gone with Nan to some event. So the first part, just give me the key, what you said. How do you mobilize? Well, I'll tell you, this is the year. They're running. These guys that you know are running. And when you see them and they shake the tin cup in front of you, say, where are you on Bowles-Simpson? We don't call it that. We did call it Bowles-Simpson, but the acronym there was destructive. And so we moved it to SB, and that was just as bad. But people have to get involved. They have to study. They have to learn, and they have to turn off their television. You're going to tune in only the things that reinforce you. You want to know how to get off this addiction, then if you're an MSNBC guy, then you're certainly not watching Fox. And if you're a Fox guy, you certainly aren't watching. And don't forget, these people who are juicing you all up, from Rush Limbaugh to the gal Maddow or whatever, they couldn't administer their way out of a paper sack. They're entertainers. They make money off of you by getting you all juiced up. That's their sole function. They have nothing good. They're not interested in clarity. They're interested in conflict, confusion, and complexity. And the people are just almost deadened by it all. It's a sad case. They'll come up to Erskine and I and say, good work, we love what you did. But then they'll also say, except for that one part, which is their part. And you don't dare touch that part or they'll stab your eyes out with a salad fork. That's the way it works. There's a great selfishness going on in America that I've never seen in my lifetime. And in our report, which was 67 pages long, and in English, we used words like going broke and shared sacrifice. There has been no shared sacrifice in this country since World War II, and it ain't about to start. Didn't answer your question, but I got a lot off my chest in that brief interlude. But, the election, here's going to get another debate, I guess. They've cut a couple of people out already. I don't know, to me, nobody has asked them yet what our commission said. Will some moderator say, what are you going to do about the national debt? And you'll see a tap dance that you've never seen before. It's almost ritualistic. If you ever saw that old play, Best Little Whorehouse in Texas, you remember that politician that just did that tap dance and all through the play? Marvelous thing. I don't know many have seen that. The name itself would have drawn people to it. Anyway, they're not answering the questions, but they're sure passionate about their country and the little guy. Well, I tell you, ladies and gentlemen, the little guy, when the interest rates go up and inflation hits, the little guy will be punished. The money guys, and Erskine taught me this, Erskine is a wonderful man. He sold his first business for $300 million when he was about 30. And he said, Al, the money guys will always take care of themselves. You don't have to worry about that. They don't worry about it. They will. But the little guy that everybody talks about is going to get a real jerking around. And that's your country. And there's things to do about it. Get involved. And when they're asking you for money, just say, where are you on that plan? And they'll say, I loved it all except, and they'll know what this guy's favorite thing is. He's probably municipal bonded. I loved it all except I would never let them get away with getting rid of municipal bond interest. They say, oh, God bless you. They'll know just exactly when they get in that room what the cherished chunk is of this patriotic chap. I'm not a cynic. I thought I was a skeptic. I was a skeptic, and I think I'm getting cynical because I don't know how you can do any better than range between Dick Durbin and Tom Coburn and put a 67-page report where everybody took off because we hit everybody. And that's why it didn't go, and it won't go. It won't go because we effectively have pissed off everyone in America. And let me tell you, they're smoked. When they come up to you and let you know, how can you do this? How can you do this? I mean, so you got rid of a 2.5% medical device tax, which could be paid by Stryker and Medtronic and all the heavy hitters in the world, and you and I are going to get it now. If that ain't power, you tell me. That's what's out there. Plenty of it.
Yes, Senator, you were one of the architects of the Immigration Reform Act of 1986, the Simpson-Mazzoli bill, and I understand it allowed approximately 3 million immigrants to become citizens, and now here we are in 2016, and I understand there may be 11 million illegal immigrants in the U.S. What happened? What happened to the Immigration Reform Act of 1986, and why are we in another controversy about immigration?
Well, we sure are. And Dick Lamb was a tremendous ally in that. We both serve on a board of the Federation of American Immigration Reform, and I'm very pleased always to serve with him. Let me tell you what happened. It's very simple. We didn't call it amnesty. We called it legalization. And it worked. Had we used the word amnesty, it never would have gotten anywhere. Vietnam War was close to that point, so that wasn't. So we changed the word to legalization, and we said, look, if you're in the United States prior to this date, we'll put you on a path toward legalization, and we'll put you on a path. We didn't talk about paying debt or anything else. We just said we'll make you in a temporary position. They'll know where you are, because let me tell you, if you're part of a country with 11 or 12 million illegal undocumented people, you shouldn't feel too good because they're exploited totally. And they pick them up at the 7-Eleven and take them to the nicest spots in town and give them $3 at the end of the day and send them back down the road. Or they're working in the kitchen for $50 a month and every fourth Thursday off. I've been in places like that where they spill Chardonnay on your shoes and say, why would your bill affect Sylvia out here in the kitchen? I said, oh, well, she looks happy. Looks like a pack horse. Anyway, so where the hell was I? Yes. So we put in the bill very carefully. Ted Kennedy and I were in it. There were Republicans and Democrats all over. It was a good bipartisan bill. Passed the Senate by I think 67 to 20 something. Got to the House, had trouble over there, because we had a provision in there that we had to have a more secure identifier. We didn't say what it was. We were thinking a slide card, like at Macy's or the old Daniels and Fishers, or we were thinking a card maybe with the maiden name of the person's mother, something you couldn't counterfeit. And guess what happened? The AARP and the ACLU and Grover Norquist, the right and the left, said, don't you see what this bill is? It's a national ID card. And then a congressman from Los Angeles said, get ready, we'll be having tattoos like Nazi Germany. So you can imagine with that atmosphere what happened in the House. The very last night was the tattoo speech by Roybal, Ed Roybal. And they took it out. They took out all the language about a more secure identifier, which was the guts of the whole bill. So the bill was signed by the president, went into non-effect because you couldn't have a more secure identifier. So the employer's thinking, I'm not the cop of the world. You know, I can't tell these damn green cards. So it was a failure, and it will remain so. And the irony now is they're talking about retina scans and fingerprints, and I haven't heard a single editorial about the slippery slope to a national ID card. But I can tell you, it's chaos, and it's become a trigger point. You mentioned immigration. Look what they're doing to Rubio just because he made a try. He made a try at it. And boy, once he got into it, they began to rip his shorts off. And you have a real problem. Today it's about amnesty and taking care of these slobs who killing people, and they are. And the sanctuary movement is a total joke. It's a mess. But anyway, that's what happened to the bill. And I watched it happen. I'm sure Dick and we talked about it. And now at least they're talking about some other things. They're talking about fining them. I don't know how they pay the money, but you can fine them. They're putting them into a temporary thing. At least that was the bill that was put up and then taken away. But it was unworkable because it lost its guts, which was the more secure identifier. How's that? The hook. The hook is coming. I want to thank you for your courtesy and thank you for what you do for Rotary. It's, you know, service above self is the name of the game. Well, serve yourself. Get involved.
Let's see.